Research involving or affecting Indigenous peoples, communities, organizations, and lands requires you to consider relationships and perspectives that are different and distinct from those of EDI. The research funding agencies recognize that a distinctions-based approach is needed to ensure that the unique rights, interests, and circumstances of the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit are acknowledged, affirmed, and implemented. In the context of the natural sciences and engineering, NSERC defines Indigenous research as research in any field or discipline related to the natural sciences or engineering that is conducted by, grounded in, or meaningfully engaged with First Nations, Inuit, Métis, or other Indigenous peoples and nations, communities, societies, or individuals, and their wisdom, cultures, experiences, or knowledge systems, as expressed in their dynamic forms, past and present. You must respect Indigenous peoples' knowledge systems by ensuring that the various and distinct worldviews of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples are represented in planning and decision-making. From the earliest stages of conception and design of projects through to the analysis and dissemination of results. You must ensure that the rights of Indigenous peoples are upheld. These rights include the right to self-determination, self-governance, and ownership of knowledge and data resulting from the research. These are upheld by adhering to principles such as the First Nations Principles of Ownership, Control, Access, and Possession, or OCAP, and/or any other relevant principles, guidelines, or protocols determined by Indigenous partners. For more information on the requirements for engaging with Indigenous rights holders, including communities, consult the NSERC webpage on Indigenous research. There, you will also find many resources, including the Tri-Council Policy Statement on Ethical Conduct for Research Involving Humans, specifically Chapter 9 on Research Involving the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples of Canada. Here are some helpful questions to consider. They are not meant to be exhaustive. It is important to approach each project individually and to build a strong relationship with the Indigenous community before a research project starts, so that they are involved throughout the full process. In what ways are you meaningfully engaging with the community and considering their own research priorities and interests in knowledge sharing and the co-production of knowledge, even if you are from the same community? How are you engaging, appropriately recognizing, and compensating the role of elders, knowledge keepers, and/or knowledge holders in the research process? How is there reciprocity in the design of the study so that both the community and the researchers benefit? How are Indigenous concepts, principles, and protocols recognized and integrated in the research methodology and throughout the research process? How have you taken into consideration community expectations regarding authorship, management, and governance of research outputs? In what languages do your dissemination materials need to be so that they are inclusive of and accessible to Indigenous researchers, collaborators, and affected communities? In cases that involve a research site, which Indigenous government, organization, or community owns the land or has interests in the research site? Let's look at an example. Indigenous self-determination, community engagement, and co-development informed the design of the Dehcho Collaborative on Permafrost. Indigenous communities in the Dehcho region of the Northwest Territories identified the urgent need to address permafrost thaw, which is negatively affecting the region's economy and the health, well-being, and livelihoods of its residents. The Dehcho First Nations prioritized addressing the issue and proposed a collaboration with the Scotty Creek Research Station. The two-way knowledge exchange, combining Western and Indigenous knowledge on permafrost, improves monitoring, adaptation, process understanding, and prediction of permafrost thaw in the region, so that communities can manage and respond to disruptions in the water cycles and ecosystems in the region. When the Center for Northern Studies produced films, articles, and material on water and environmental resources for and with Indigenous Northern communities, they prioritized disseminating materials in the language of the community that helped shape the research and was affected by it. The research program involved elders, local guides and coordinators, youth, and members of academic research teams working together to train Inuit youth in environmental data collection. The outreach and dissemination materials are available in English as well as Inuktitut. Inclusive approaches like this help to increase the significance and impact of research. You are now better equipped to integrate equity, diversity, and inclusion considerations in your own research. You were also introduced to some concepts of Indigenous research and now have a greater understanding of how research with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis needs to be considered from a perspective of affirming inherent Indigenous rights, advancing reconciliation, and preventing the continued harm committed by colonial institutions, including research institutions. For more guiding questions, examples, and information, refer to the NSERC Guide on Integrating Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Considerations in Research. Please also consult any relevant NSERC program information.